in this session, we're talking about how to get started on AI. From my understanding is there are some mysteries as to what AI can do for you and how it actually works. So to give you a little bit of background, AI is trained on what is called LLM. So AI uses something that is called LLM. So LLM stands for Large Language Model. And what this is actually referring to is that it's trained on a series of probabilities of how people actually use specific language, which is why it's large language, because it's a whole bunch of people and the way that they, for example, search for things or how they write things. And specifically, if we're talking about something like ChatGPT, it'll be in English. And this is the same for any of the AI out there, like whether it's ChatGPT, as you can see on the right side of the screen, or it's Copilot, Gemini, Claude, and these are all just different companies that have come up with their own version of AI. Now, what you need to understand, and this might be a little bit too much information, is that each of the different, let's call them brands. So for example, Google has created Gemini. As you can imagine, when Google was training its AI, and it was using large language model to go and create Gemini, it then used people's searches on Google. So this is like a decade and a half, 2 decades of people, more than that, of how people have just input things into Google. So that means that the output that comes out from Gemini will have a reflection on how people systematically search for things within Google search. This is the same as if we're going to go and think about this in a different model. So ChatGPT will have been trained on a very specific way that the large language will have been used, and then it comes out with its own output. Okay, so that's a little background on what actually AI and why it quote unquote looks like it can think on your behalf. It doesn't really necessarily do that. It's a probability of how things may get searched. So it really is not so much as thinking, feeling, there's none of those things. It's just the way that it has been trained based in language. So I hope that sort of gives you a little bit of understanding as to why it's important for us to understand how AI was created or it's trained. So it gives you an output that is helpful for you. So how we're going to get started on this AI is what will be, you can see that a lot of the encounters that I have with AI are people will copy something. So they'll copy an output and then they assume that's good. And then they assume that is like the way to get started, except it kind of isn't, and it sort of is. So they copy something and then they directly take whatever they've copied and then they paste it into some sort of an output. And in this scenario, it might be I copy from here, I paste it into something like ChatGPT that you can see on the right, and then whatever the output is then becomes the correct answer. And that can be, for example, your homework. And so by copy pasting, it sort of answers everything that the assignment brief has requested, except it obviously hasn't, because usually answers are quite generic. So this is something that is important to bear in mind as to why it's really easy to spot when things are created by AI, because it is very easy to understand when something is created by AI, especially for those who use a lot of AI. Now, with that said, it's really important to then have different steps to get you started. For this week, what we're looking for is, rather than you copy pasting, is that you're actually able to, well, if you have the time and then you're interested, to go and see what each of the platforms can offer you. So I've said, and it also has been listed, ChatGPT, that's one option. Gemini is another option. Copilot, so this is Microsoft's option. This is already naturally embedded into their search, like Bing. And every single one of these will have a different output because it is based on how it was trained. Gemini is trained on Google. Copilot is trained on Microsoft. So the output again is going to be different. I think currently sort of what everybody ends up using is ChatGPT because it's the one that has been given the most amount of attention. There is no right or wrong. So from here, let's actually take a look on what that would look like. So I already have ChatGPT open on the right side here. So this is a paid version of it, and you can see that there are prompts that have been provided for you, like create a cartoon, suggest a recipe, tell me a fun fact. If you've never gone into ChatGPT, please do a quick search and look for ChatGPT. And then you can have different models. As I had mentioned, this is a paid version. So that means that I have all these other options that I can use. For me, I use 4.0 the most. I've tried some of the other versions. I don't really like the output just because it's really clunky. It's trying to do something that I'm not looking for. And obviously, I've now trained my own bots so much that it knows what it is that I'm looking for. So 4.0 is perfectly fine for me. Again, if you've never actually typed into this before, we can just actually do something very simple here. Hi. And it will ask you, like if you've ever tried to go and type into customer service, like on the bottom right hand side on websites, and they're trying to go and be helpful, which they're probably like not very helpful. They will sort of categorize the information that you're needing from them. So it's like, I need help with paying a bill or whatnot. This is a very similar way of using AI. So what you're asked to do here is, what can you help me help with? Question. So you can see that, we were talking about earlier, often what I see when people aren't really entirely sure how to get started on AI, there's a lot of copy pasting happening. That isn't necessary here because you can see that really it's a robot that has predictability on specific types of words, and it can help you with things like brainstorming, editing, lesson planning, teaching you things about market strategy. It just goes on and on and on and on and on. So start with something very simple here and ask it what, hold on, let's be quite short. Explain to me in one sentence what is strategy? Okay, very simply, it tells you what that is. Now, of course, we don't know where this comes from. So this might be a very generic way of looking at it. There are no sources. There's none of those things that we're used to when we are reading in, for example, textbooks or listening to industry experts. But if you're looking for something that is very simple, quite concise, and you have to tell it things. You have to delegate how to get started on things. And really, I see it as my assistant. Like, I need you to do this now. And then we go back and forth many, many times. But this is one way for you to go and get started on that. Please follow the rest of the instructions as to like, take a screenshot, record a 30-second video. These are all things that I have already provided for you. So you know what is necessary in order for me to see that you have completed this exercise. Thank you.